I'm Dr. Greg Ellis. I want to talk today about the dietary revolution that's facing the people of the world. The undoing of the current dietary dogma. Now, it's very interesting, the way the facts are unfolding. I'm going to read this piece to you. The unraveling of the details of these cellular events has proceeded rapidly, but their physiologic relevance to lifestyle change has been largely ignored. So what he's talking about is the fact that we're finding out how dangerous carbohydrates are, and fat has taken the bad rap all these years when it never really was fat. It's always been carbohydrates that were causing the problem. And so since the low-carb diet became popular in the early 2000s, a small group of researchers has begun to identify the science underlying what goes on with carbohydrates and how they affect us. So the question is, how can the establishment be so wrong? How can it be so confused as to what's going on? Obviously, it's not aware of this research. I'll read this other statement to you. Persistence of recommendations in the face of continued failure of large trials to show an effect of saturated fat remains one of the strange anomalies in current medical science. So that writer has observed that saturated fat does not cause heart disease, against all the beliefs that are held out there by those in the establishment. That's the government, the medical establishment, dietitians, nutritionists, the pharmaceutical company. And of course, it begs to argue that there's a lot of people profiting and feeding at that trough, so they're not going to want to let go of that really anytime soon, particularly now that their favored child, carbohydrates, is being implicated in all manner of human diseases. So the question is, why do they all have it so wrong? You look at the new USDA My Plate, where they portioned a plate into 4 different quarters. So put vegetables in one, fruit in the other, grains in the other, and protein in the last one. My daughter even went ahead and figured out on the website that if she followed the recommendations for a 2,300 calorie a day diet, that would include 6.3 ounces of meat. Now that's not much meat. So the USDA and all the health authorities are, in a sense, in my view, pushing us towards vegetarianism, which has never been shown to be healthy, although they believe it's healthy. Now, you have to know something about the nature of science and how it's constructed, and this has been written about fairly extensively. Thomas Kuhn has written a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution, and describes in there why certain belief systems, he calls them paradigms, are maintained. And you want to look at the spread of this information and how it goes through all these organizations. Well, all these organizations are tied tightly together. They have shared belief systems, and once they grab onto an idea, they're going to stick with that. They don't let it go very easily. Kuhn writes that once an idea, a belief system is entrenched, they're not going to let it go. He also argues that scientists are not interested in uncovering new ideas. They want to keep working on the old idea and keep digging ever deeper into it and developing that further. So science is not interested in new ideas, which shocks me. I learned that a long time ago. I thought that's all it was interested in. Many of you probably believe that's what science is all about, uncovering new ideas. It's not. And whenever new ideas are presented, that information is usually suppressed because it doesn't want to be dealt with. They don't want to take a look at it. So the answer is not a complicated one. The community is set up to maintain its existing belief systems and not let new ideas come in, and then they resist them very strongly. So we're not going to get a change, I believe, in the idea that saturated fat is not involved in disease processes and carbohydrates are, because they're so anti what we currently believe, and they can't let that go. Now, these papers indicate that glitches are developing, and that's the only time when things change. When enough glitches appear, things will eventually change. But we're only talking about the last several years that these ideas are coming out. And there's a lot of people involved in this who understand this and realize that carbohydrates are a major problem. I actually uncovered a research paper the other day, which I never was not aware of before, published in 1983, that actually indicated the idea that maybe carbohydrates were the cause of coronary disease and not fat. Now, all the studies that were done in nutritional areas and in clinical trials and other scientific explorations of the issue of diet and heart disease never fractionated the foods out into their separate food categories. Carbohydrates and fats were all lumped together, and people consumed those things together. A whole different ballgame occurs when you restrict your carbohydrates and consume more fat. That's the information that's just getting out there now, and that's not going to change a lot of people's minds. So that's why when I talk to people, I tell them that the people are going to have to go out here and change this. This is going to have to be something that comes from the people, because every time you walk into your doctor's office, he's going to get all over you about your cholesterol and your saturated fat, and that's not going to end anytime soon until this current generation dies out and new young people come up who are aware of this. I think we're still looking at decades. But if you are concerned about your own health, you really want to jump onto this information, because it's there, it's here, we have it, we possess it, we know it now, that saturated fat and cholesterol are never the cause of the problem. It's always carbohydrates. And then there's the argument now that there could be a difference between refined carbohydrates, like refined flour versus whole flour. And I don't buy into that argument, because at the end of the day, the final product that's released from any carbohydrate-containing food is glucose, or blood sugar. And we know it's glucose that causes the problems. And that is a function of the glycation theory of aging and disease. So it's the glucose that creates all kinds of problems in your body, and it's the byproducts of glucose metabolism that create further and more intense damage, and they damage all parts of your body, including your blood vessels and your energy-producing parts called the mitochondria. So it never was fat. But the belief system is wrong. The belief that the establishment holds is wrong. It's going to remain wrong, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, because they can't let it go, because they've been told it for so long, so many times, and in so many ways, that to look at an alternative view now, that the things, the foodstuffs they have been actually promoting is the cause, and not what they have been promoting, is going to be a very difficult pill to swallow. So that's the answer to the question that was posed to me by one of my readers. Why did they all have it so wrong? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and it's just the whole way the scientific community and the process is set up keeps the myths going. So that's the answer to that tough question. I'm Dr. Greg Ellis.